So, this video, this, you know, newest edition of Stupidity in the Game Sphere comes from someone saying something so stupid that I just couldn't let it go. So what I'm talking about is, one of the developers of Mass Effect Andromeda saying, well, did Mass Effect Andromeda get a fair shake? And he's like, well, it came out during a time where there was a lot of competition and the game is flawed. And he's like, could you put that in more succinctly? He's like, well, it came out as the same time as The Legend of Zelda as Breath of the Wild. And I'm like if he had continued with his argument with the other games that came out around the same time, Horizon Zero Dawn, stuff like that, I would say okay. But I'm gonna enumerate in this visual essay that's just really fucking stupid, and the reasons why. I'm going to give you three examples of it. So without much ado, here we go. So lifetime to date, Breath of the Wild has sold, I want to say 9 million. Here, let me look it up. Breath of the Wild sales numbers. Alright. And I'm looking at the Switch and the Wii U. So basically it sold 7.34 million on the on the Switch, and it sold, let's see, roughly 1.31 million on the Wii U. So in total, it sold around 9 million. Okay, give or take. All right, 9 million. And Mass Effect Andromeda is. Mass Effect Andromeda is around, Mass Effect Andromeda on all platforms has sold around 3 million. No, 2.5. So, I mean, it kind of failed miserably, okay? Which is sad, but here's the thing, okay? You can't blame, say that Mass Effect Andromeda failed because of the Breath of the Wild, because they aren't in the same genre. They aren't competing against each other. Mass Effect Andromeda was an action RPG. Breath of the Wild is an exploration, is a survival exploration game. Okay, it's not really, it's not very actiony in the classical sense. Yeah, there's action in it, but that's not the sole focus of the title. So, Mass Effect Andromeda sold what? Roughly a little over, let's say, 2.4 million, and that's not bad. It surely didn't make up its budget for the 4 years it was in development, but I mean, that's not a bad sales number. But I don't think number-wise that those numbers basically, I don't think you can blame the Nintendo system, because I mean, yes, while it is true Breath of the Wild has sold amazingly, it was launching with a new system, so you had that going on. Mass Effect was only on shit, old shit that had been out for a while. Not really anything special about that. But that's neither here nor there. Ultimately, my conclusion to this is that, the two games aren't in the same genre, and while Breath of the Wild has sold a lot more than Mass Effect Andromeda, you can't say that, well, it somehow has diminished or made it worse or something like that. So, I think people need to understand that. And let's move on to the second reason that Breath of the Wild brought it down after the cut. So the second reason that I believe that, there are two distinct, that you can't lump Breath of the Wild in with, you can't say that, you can't blame Breath of the Wild as the reason that Mass Effect Andromeda didn't sell well. You can't, is because the audience is completely different for these two games. Yes, and I'm aware that I have Mass Effect Andromeda and Breath of the Wild, but here's the thing. Mass Effect Andromeda, I'm a Mass Effect fan, so I was going to get that game regardless. I didn't get it at launch. I got it once they started reducing the price for like $30. And if I had just waited another 2 weeks, I could have gotten it for like under 20 for like $16. But, it is what it is. But basically what I'm saying is that the audience is completely different for these two games. And this can be shown by the simple fact that, Breath of the Wild came out on two platforms. It came out on the Wii U and the Switch. The Wii U had one Mass Effect game, and it was Mass Effect 3. And Mass Effect 3 fucking sucked on the Wii U, okay? It was not a good game. It was once more EA's half-ass efforts to put a game on a system that they literally had no reason to give a shit about. And you could tell because, that's what EA does. EA loves doing that. They love putting out games that are half-assed as fuck. And then they're like, well, why are you complaining? Because you gave us a half-assed gameplay experience. But, and then the Switch. Aside from the FIFA games, there are no EA games on the system. Definitely no game that seems to be something like Mass Effect. So basically, there are no, and here's the thing, there are no Frostbite games on either systems. There are no games on either systems that use the Frostbite engine, which is what Mass Effect Andromeda is made in. So my question is, what the fuck? Aside from Mass Effect 3, which Mass Effect 3, I would tell anyone this, Mass Effect 3 is not a good game. If you're going to start the Mass Effect series, Mass Effect 3 is not a good game to start with. I would go 2 over 3 because 3, there's a lot of shit going on in 3, and you have no point of entry in what's going on. And that's just weird. That's just, to scapegoat, well, it's Nintendo. But none of your games are on a Nintendo system. Like, it's not even, like, Mass Effect Andromeda isn't on a Nintendo system. It's not like, typically speaking, when people say there's competition, you say, okay, well, you look at something, you say, well, I could have this, or I could do this, right? But it's in the same thing. It's kind of like blaming Breath of the Wild is like if you own a restaurant and your restaurant isn't doing good business. Let's say your restaurant is in Florida. You're like, my restaurant's not doing good business. And then instead of you saying, well, maybe it's my servers, maybe it's the food, maybe it's the service. No, it's some restaurant in Alaska is the reason. Like, you're both restaurants, but they're not even in the same area as you. How can that be a thing? Which is basically how it feels to deal with what these people are saying right now. It just shows how desperate they are to scapegoat everything at EA, which makes sense because that's what EA has been doing. Every problem they have, they want to scapegoat it. So let's move on to the third reason why it's total bullshit to blame Nintendo and Breath of the Wild for the Mass Effect Andromeda's failures. So at the end of the day, as the placard says, you know, the platform is the real is one of the reasons that they're using. Well, it had competition on these platforms, but not really. I mean, Mass Effect has always been very different from other games. Like, Horizon Zero Dawn is a good game, but it's not Mass Effect. Breath of the Wild, I love Breath of the Wild, but it's not a Mass Effect game. Like, each of these games have their own distinct feeling depending on the platform they're on. And you can't really say, well, it's like this, so it must be like that. That's very disingenuous. But I mean, this is BioWare and EA, so disingenuous facts and words and sentences are what they live by. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it boils down to the platform that these systems that this game was on. This game was on PC, PS4, Xbox One. All three of these systems are relatively powerful, graphic intensive. We're going to show off the power of this system, blah, 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 blah. The power of the system, because people love to talk about power. And at the end of the day, listen. I like the power arguments as much as the next person, but I mean, Breath of the Wild is a gorgeous looking game, but not because it's running on particularly powerful hardware. It's a gorgeous looking game because of the art style, or because of the gameplay mechanics, or the art aesthetic. That's it. Like, it's not like gorgeous in a you can't say, well, the story is really good, because it's not. You can't say, well, it really holds true. It's a culmination of all the things we love about The Legend of Zelda, because, in my opinion, it's not. So, I mean, Mass Effect Andromeda, basically, its competition was not a game on a platform that none of the other games, except for a very piss-poor port of the third one in a 4-game series, that's very disingenuous, and, well, actually, let's call it what it is. It's clearly a straw man argument. I will get into the real reason why Mass Effect Andromeda failed in the conclusion after the cut. So basically, here's the real reason Mass Effect Andromeda failed. Okay. Mass Effect Andromeda failed because it was in development hell for 4 years. Basically, the people in charge, like, you had no leadership. You had different factions who wanted things to go a different way. By the time you did have someone in charge who's like, okay, this is the direction we're going to go, they were under a time crunch. So basically, the game was basically in it was basically just an idea and some strings of code for 3 years. The last year, what was supposed to be a massive open world RPG action game, they were like, okay, now you got to make this into a full and complete game. No one can make those types of odds. Okay, like, could you imagine if Nintendo said, hey, make a game on the scale of Breath of the Wild in 1 year? They couldn't do it. It couldn't be done. And that's basically what happened with that's basically what happened with Mass Effect Andromeda. And here's the thing. This wasn't their A-team studio making this game. This was like the C team making this game. Because the A and B teams are working on Anthem, which is they're like, this game has to do well or we're fucked game, okay? So, Mass Effect Andromeda failed because of that. Mass Effect Andromeda also failed because basically at the end of the day, the game is just not very good. Okay, it's mediocre. For example, I'll give you an example of what I mean, okay? As far as, it's a mediocre title as far as being a BioWare game. Like, I've noticed that BioWare's, the quality of their RPGs pretty much plateaued out, 2.5, 3 gens ago. Like, okay, when they were making, like, Neverwinter Nights, they were on top, right? And then they did Dragon Age Origins, which was basically kind of like a love letter to Neverwinter Nights. And then they did Jade Empire, which is pretty good. You know, it wasn't perfect, it was pretty good. And then they did, from Jade Empire, they went to Mass Effect, okay? And then they did Dragon Age, well, I already said Dragon Age Origins. Mass Effect, which Mass Effect was flawed. It was not perfect. There were some issues with that game. Mass Effect 2 was the perfect balance between what you had in the original Mass Effect and being more action-oriented. And then they started going downhill after Mass Effect 2. Dragon Age 2 sucked. Dragon Age Inquisition, a mediocre game. I'm sorry. I know a lot of people are like, that game was good. Nah, not really, no. Dragon Age Inquisition felt like a MMO light, like a single-player MMO. Except it had none of the fun that you like. It didn't have the open world of an MMO. It had the shitty, you know, find 5 of these herb bundle quests, or, you know, collect the remains from 6 graves quests. But it didn't have any meaningful side quests. It didn't really have really good character expansion. Like, the only way you could expand your characters is just by talking to random people. Mass Effect Andromeda suffered from those same things, basically. Like, it's just a lot of, like, Mass Effect Andromeda is just a lot of shit thrown together, and they were hoping that, you know, people would let it go. But gamers have become more discerning, and that's what hurt the game. Because it's not very good, okay? I have that game. It is not very good. It could be a lot better. But with that being said, let's move on to the final, to the overall summation of everything after the... So basically, here's my conclusion. Mass Effect Andromeda didn't sell well because it's just not very good. You know, I know the guy's like, he doesn't want to say it sucked, but I'll say it. Mass Effect Andromeda, compared to the other 3 games in the series, is not good. Okay? That's why it failed. Okay? And, you know, in order for you to recognize a problem, you first have to acknowledge it. That being said, that's the end of this Stupidity in the Gamosphere. Stay tuned for more, because more stupid shit's probably going to come up. We will be talking about, if you want to hear more from us, from this channel, there will be 2 podcasts this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, both starting at 7:30. The first one goes from 7:30 to 8:30. The second one on Sunday goes from 7:30 to 9. The first one on Saturday is for science fiction. It's called the Sci-Fi Power Hour-ish, because it's around an hour. And the second one is BS Busters, where we talk about the news of the week, and then we go over a topic in video gaming. That's right, every Saturday and Sunday, unless there's some type of announcement, which normally I will announce such things. So with that being said, that's the end of the video. Thank you. I'm glad you could join, and good day. Remember, rate, comment, share, subscribe. I will try, if you make comments in the comment section, I will try to respond to you. So there is interaction. And once again, BS Busters and Sci-Fi Power Hour this weekend, Saturday, Sunday, both start at 7:30. One's an hour long, the other is an hour and a half. Thank you, and have a good day.